Welcome, welcome, welcome to Inspire, Innovate, and Ignite, conversations that count. These wonderful conversations take place sometimes twice a week, sometimes only once a week, but we are joined by a panel of experts in their fields and experts in our conversation tonight. And our conversation tonight is celebrating transitioning between lives. Now, that's a really interesting topic because quite often those of us who are spiritual think of transitioning as being between one life and another life, between one dimension and another dimension. But what we're really talking about is all of that, plus applying that to transitioning through the different events in our human earthly lives. And that's where the conversation is going to get really exciting and inspirational. We have with us tonight Lee Moore. I hope I pronounced that correctly, Lee Moore. You're muted. Sorry.
It's actually Lay, but that's okay.
Lay, I'll try to remember that. Thank you. And Nicole Host, Marina Shakor, and Heidi Hennion. And I'm going to ask each one of you to introduce yourselves, give a little bit about yourself, tell us where you're from, what inspires you, and what brings you to this conversation tonight. Heidi, would you like to start?
Sure. Let's see. As anybody who's seen me on any of the other panels or on Facebook or anything, my bandwagon right now is helping people become their own best friend. We need to be able to do that. We're with ourselves 24/7. And why not just have fun and have fun with the conversations that are going on in your head and all of that. So that's what I do. And I'll leave it at that.
Thank you so much, Heidi. Lay Moore, would you like to tell us a little bit about yourself and what brings you here tonight?
Hi, I'm from the Big Island of Hawaii, and I have had 3 near-death experiences and a shared death experience. I help people in their life transitions. That's for the ones that are here. And I guide them to their best life. And that's why I'm here today, is because that's exactly what I do.
And you are a perfect expert for this conversation. I'm so glad you're here. Nicole, please tell us a little bit about you and what you do and what brings you here tonight.
Thank you. Well, I'm originally from California. I'm now in Brooklyn, New York, and that's part of my journey is, following my purpose and my intuition. And I try to help other people do the same and reconnect to the truth of who they are and live their most intentional, fulfilling life so that they don't have any regrets. And a big part of mine is spiritual also. I'm a tarot reader, but I definitely believe that we're constantly being provided guidance, and it's whether we listen to it or not that makes a difference now.
Oh, you're going to have a lot to offer tonight. We've got a very well-rounded panel. And that brings us finally to Marina Shakor. Marina, will you tell us a little bit about yourself and why you're here tonight?
Well, transitioning seems to be probably my motto. I have transitioned physically from many places, but I've also transitioned spiritually from not wanting to be in that space to really, really enjoying it. And I have developed a true love to help others transition into a better life here. I'm not equipped to help them to transition over, but I know a lot, have read a lot about the transitioning. So there you go.
Okay. Well, I think we've got a beautifully full panel to talk about this entire concept of transitioning between lives. I'm Sue Rumack. I'm an empath brain retrainer, and that basically means that I help people to manage their energetic protection and also, again, like everybody else said, bring themselves to their best lives. I'm a channeler and a medium of some sort, a healer, an energy healer, and I'm the facilitator of this wonderful panel. So let's get started so we don't lose time. I'm going to ask you, I guess my first question would be, what is your definition of a life transition? That's the first part of it. Can you define the differences between positive and negative transitions? You can answer that in any way you like. I'm going to ask eeny, meeny, miny, mo. Let's start with Lay, if that's okay
Thank you
with
for that. That's fine with me.
Thank you.
I really don't see any transition, whether it be spiritual or whether it be physical, as being positive or negative. I think they're all positive. They're all
Oops.
for our highest
Hold
good.
on.
And
Hold on, people. Just 1 second. Something just clicked on that shouldn't have. Huh, maybe it should have. I apologize for that, Lay. Go ahead, please.
okay,
Mhm. We're all
they're
good.
all for our highest good, and they're all to benefit us. And whether it be a life transition, as in losing someone, or whether it be a life transition, as in moving somewhere, these are all experiences that are opportunities for us to grow. And so I don't see anything as a negative transition. I think they're all positive.
I tend to agree with you. I truly do. Who would like to build onto that? Because I think Lay's opened a very good window for us. Heidi. Your
Yeah,
turn.
I'll do that because I agree exactly with what Leigh is saying. There's constant transition. That seems to be the human condition. I remember my senior yearbook almost 40 years ago now, putting in the only constant is change. And every change is a transition. Now, for me, transitions, we have little ones during the day. We have little things that come up. And then we have these larger ones that seem to be very, very life-changing. It might be a health issue. It might be a parent dying. It may be all of a sudden the angels are talking to you and you don't know what to do with that because you've never dealt with that. Or even somebody saying something to you and that helps to change or brings awareness to a behavior that you have that you really is a learning and a transition. The positive and negative side, when we see something as positive and negative, for me, that's the emotion that I'm assigning to it and have decided it's negative or positive. And one of the things that I know, if something's coming up that I can see as a major transition, so to speak, because I mean, I want to say like major because we're always there. If I find myself going into what I would call a darker place or a darker feeling, I can step back from that and say, okay, I'm feeling grief. It's not negative. It's a natural movement of the energy that is created by something that, quote unquote, you might think of as negative. So that would be what I would want to add. It's really our own assignment from our own history and our own experiences that may cause us to see something as positive or negative. Whereas again, like Leigh was saying, it's really all for our growth. The things that I know at one time I decided were negative have been some of the most inspirational changes that have happened in my life, the most growth, the most inner spiritual and development that's happened. So that would be my 2 cents.
Thank you. And I think it's really important for people to notice, as Heidi and Leigh, that was fantastic. I think it's important for people to recognize too that some of those changes that happen to us, I like to call them transitions, but some of those, we don't actually see them transitioning from a negative to a positive for a very long time. Sometimes it's in hindsight that we actually see that life transition can be celebrated.
And I'd also like to put one other thing on there, if I may. We can have a positive transition going to another positive transition and another positive transition. For example, I know in my own spiritual development, I will really have learned something and grown in it. And then I spend a time developing it, playing with it, understanding it. And then all of a sudden another transition, something more comes in. So, from one job to another job, everyone always, getting a raise, enjoying the new company. So there's lots of it's not all, and we grow from those too. A lot of times we think it's only the negative things that help us grow. Our society seems to really
Yes.
push that. Positive things help us to grow, I think, sometimes even more exponentially.
I think that's really important to take note of as well. Thank you so much. Nicole, would you like to take the next microphone?
Sure. Well, as I'm listening to you talk, it reminds me of like tarot card images and even themes. Like you were saying, there's small transitions daily, which are like the minor arcana to me, like, little choices we make day to day. And then there's like the major life moments where we might be at a turning point or something like that, where I think of like the death card, which is like right in the middle. And, we think of death as like a negative thing, right? Or in tarot, it's a positive thing. It means leaving one part of you behind that's no longer serving you and transitioning to like another level of consciousness, kind of maybe more awareness or on a better path or whatever. And I think that actual death, I've gone through like losing a mother, and it kind of brings you down to your essence. And in a spiritual perspective, I think that's a good thing. But sometimes our limited human perspective, we want to label it as a bad thing, or we don't see the bigger spiritual reason behind it. So I agree that I don't see them as, negative or positive, but I know it can feel that way to us, and I like to help people through those transitions when it seems scary, or, can make you feel lost or confused too, because it's a new state. But I think we can always feel when those, they're like cycles, right? Or chapters that are closing. And we can, if we're in tune with ourselves, our energy, we can tell when maybe we're holding on to a job too long, or we're holding on to a safe place maybe too long, instead of pushing ourselves forward on our path. And I think can actually be powerful when we're in those transition periods that might seem a little scary. I always say, like, if it seems scary, that's my first sign to do it, because I'm going to grow from it, right? Whereas otherwise, we don't like change though as humans. So we tend to want to hold on to those comfortable things. But I think the transitions are the exciting part to me, because that's where something new is coming in, right? And we don't always know what it's going to be. So it can be a little bit exciting too.
I think that's very exciting. I love the challenge of something new starting, not knowing where it's going to go, where it's going to lead us, where it could lead us back through old stories and make those changes. So yeah, I like that whole idea of the tarot card images, because that gives some people something to kind of focus in on as well. Thank you. Marina, I always know that when you come on, you're going to give us a completely different perspective. And you've been bursting. I've been watching your faces. Everybody else has been talking. You've been, I got to say something. Now it's your time. Go ahead.
Now I'd like to play the advocate. What does a person feel like who's not spiritually evolved, who is, let's say, incarcerated, or houses go up in flames, or their life crumbles? I don't think that they see this as a positive event. No. It's a question of being more highly evolved, more spiritually attuned, being more in touch with seeing life and seeing life's events from a different perspective. I think that as we grow spiritually, as we have more knowledge about the structure, the way life is, life as the big picture, not only here, then we understand that every part of it is about expansion, growth through experience. But it is the key, I think, and that's where we come in, is to help others get that bigger perspective, to understand that this is not about punishment, that this is not about unfairness. The other day, a friend of mine said to me, she said, you have a very, a very unfortunate and very bad life. And I beg to differ, but I said, I don't have the time today to go through this. So I zipped it. And I let it be. That's her perspective. That is her choice. But I don't see it that way. And because of that, I was able to grow. Those that hold on to the unfairness and the pain and the grief and why me, they get stuck and they stay in this unfortunate situation. That part is the unfortunate, when we can't let go and move on. So I agree with you all. It's positive.
I love that. What you actually brought in was moving from the victim to the victor. And that's giving yourself permission to let go of whatever story it is that's been holding you, who knows for how long. And you're right, you know, people who don't have that spiritual practice, don't have that layer of, I'm going to call it not just perspective, but that layer of hope that there is something more to this life than what we just see on the surface and the things that happen to us. I think when you've lived long enough, you begin to see that things that first show up as being devastating can be turned around to being the most incredibly powerful and growing and healing experience of your life. But it doesn't happen in, you know, with a snap of a finger. It takes time. So Marina, thank you so much. Victim to victor. I absolutely love that. Now you were talking, I think each one of us has touched on the idea of these transitions not always being positive. And I know that when I'm working with people moving through transition, I always try to find a place where there is a celebration, where whatever is happening is marked by some kind of a celebration. So in your opinion, based on your own experiences, both your personal experiences and your professional experiences, should transitions be marked with some kind of event, celebration, ceremony? I think I'd like to start with Nicole on this one. Can we start with you on that?
Yeah, it's funny because I think so often when we do like achieve another level or even survive a certain chapter of our lives, we don't give ourselves credit. We're so far on to the next thing and climbing more and surviving more that we don't ever give ourselves credit for how much we just maybe went through, or even take the time to just take a moment out and like heal it or rest from it if it's been a hard chapter, right? And even we're even worse with success, I think. You know, we tend to not give ourselves credit for how much we've done, and it's always about the next thing and what we're going to achieve. And we don't often sit and just, I read the other day about just sitting and taking a moment to just look back over maybe what you would have done in the last 5 years or year, right? And giving yourself some credit for maybe how many fears you faced and that kind of thing. So, and I can say I've been guilty of that. And I try now to take those little celebrations, which don't seem important. They are kind of important, or even to give those to my clients. Like when they do something scary that I know they've been thinking about for a while, I try to make sure that they take a minute to celebrate it in some way to them, you know, because otherwise we're just on this endless climb, and it's the journey kind of thing, you know. There'll always be
Beautiful.
more to achieve.
There's always more. Absolutely right. Yeah. Thank you. And I think I think that the process of us moving faster and faster and faster from thing to thing to thing in our lives is just, I think it's a byproduct of the societies that we live in. And we are so focused on meeting goals and being successful and reaching another level and another, that we kind of forget about stopping in that moment. I think ancient societies or more indigenous societies celebrate events in a different way that we in our Western world may have definitely forgotten about. Lei, would you like to take the microphone next and lead us through your concept about celebration?
Sure. And I'm going to play a little bit of devil's advocate on Nicole. And I can see how, you know, the society that we are now moving out of had no celebrations. It feels to me, though, that the society we're moving into is, let's just celebrate absolutely everything, which then takes the power out of the achievement of whatever it is. If you're getting, if there's a child in school and they're getting plaques for showing up, and that's an achievement, it really cheapens the award. And it's like, okay, well, I just don't even have to do anything, and I'm just going to have all these awards come to me, and that's just great. But that doesn't necessarily teach them what they need to know about how to live life. And so I'm just going to say that, whereas it's not that I am against celebrating. I think celebrating is wonderful, and I think we really should celebrate ourselves more. But I think it also should be meaningful. If it gets too overdone, it loses its meaning. And that's my 2 cents.
Thank you. Marina, do you have something you'd like to say to that?
Yes, well, I'd like to bring it to a personal level, not mine, but one of my clients. She presented that she wanted to change her habit of drinking, but the way it developed was that it was really a little bit more than a habit. And so, but she decided that she wanted to stop drinking. So I did a hypnotherapy, threshold therapy. We had 3 hours of work, and she, on the last day, this the second day where I did the threshold, she stopped. That was Friday. She stopped drinking. The second day, that day, she didn't drink. She was done. Next day, there was her son had a basketball game, whatever, yada yada, a glass of wine. I check in with her every day. So the next day I checked in, she said, I'm very, very upset with myself. And I beat myself up that I broke this, and I had a glass of wine. And I responded to her that she should really be celebrating this, because it's called, she is in control now, and she could say no. She set boundaries, she said no. And I said, instead of the traditional, which is very easy for many people to come to beat themselves up, it is time to also celebrate our victories. I don't care how small they are, but if they're meaningful, and if you were able to do something that breaks with our former habits, our negative habits, our limiting beliefs, that is worth celebrating. It's just the celebration insofar as it's about the feeling of, I've accomplished something. I stood my ground. I was able to say no in this case. Let's not beat ourselves up. Let's be proud. And that changes the way we look at ourselves. So that's my input on celebrating. I'm not a big celebrator, but those are important moments because they change our vibration. And that's what I wanted for her. Raise it, bring it up.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. I think Lei had a very, very good point in that we aren't necessarily teaching our children when and how to celebrate, what is worthy of celebration. And Marina also brought forward the idea that even if you make a promise to yourself and you cannot keep it completely, if you have come some distance along that road in making the promise happen, and even if you broke the promise to yourself, you still have to celebrate the fact that there were 2 or 3 days when you did meet that promise to yourself, and then make another promise and try and do 2 or 3 more days. And I think that each side offers such a valuable piece of the puzzle. And now we take it to Heidi. I've called you Heidi on so many of our panels, and I don't know why that is.
I answer to just about anything.
Hey, you. Hey, you. Go ahead.
Hey, you. Go ahead.
Hey, you.
So this is very dear to my heart. One of the books that I wrote is using ceremony and ritual to heal from trauma and abuse.
Brilliant.
And I've been very fortunate to have spent time with some Indigenous people, especially my one teacher, Sabamfu Same. And the very last part of the process is celebrating and honoring ourselves. When we have made accomplishments, again, whether they're the little ones or the big ones, but we've actually made an accomplishment that's important to us, I feel we really do need to stop and say, yes, I did it. And sometimes we need to have others around us to recognize when we can't even recognize that we've done, especially when you're in so much transition and moving and changing, a lot of times you don't see it. And I was on there's a group that I hang out with up in Canada, who I love dearly. We have
Yay,
conversations
Canada.
every Wednesday. Yay, Canada. And something was going on, I forget what. And one of the ladies, Amanda, just stopped it. She said, Heidi, when I met you a year ago, you were, your energy was everywhere. And she's like, now you're so cool, you're so calm, you just, the change, and I want you to stop and recognize that and take a moment to celebrate it. So I think
Perfect.
it's so important that we surround ourselves with people that can see the transitions and the changes that we are making ourselves, because so often we don't even recognize them to celebrate, you know. And it is like what Marina was saying about her client not being able to see on her own that you didn't drink for 2 days and then you just had 1 glass of wine. You didn't drink a lot of wine. That's pretty cool. And then the science of that is when we do celebrate, we actually start changing the neurology in our brain. So we want to accomplish and transition and grow. And so much of society programs us to look at our lack and how things aren't working. So we'll go buy another product or we'll do something else. And we have to work with ourselves, our friends, our relatives, our children, so that when we do see that we have accomplished something, that we have moved, even if we don't see it, they can celebrate it in us, and then create the neurology of yes, and wanting more of that, and wanting more growth, and wanting to connect more.
And the whole point too, as you said, is that brain retraining. Because once you change that neurological pathway, you don't actually go back to the way it was exactly the same way. So it's kind of like you might go 2 steps forward and half a step back, and then you go again forward and maybe a full step back, but then it's always that forward motion. And I think it's the celebration that helps to the ceremony. It could just simply be ceremony. It doesn't have to be, let's have a big party. It could just be ceremony of some kind, something marking that transition for you. Because not only does it transition your human life, your this dimension, earthly life, it also affects all the other dimensions in which we actually do have some influence and don't even realize it. And we don't need to know which dimensions we have influence in. They're there. But our vibration just goes out there to all of them. So Heidi, thank you for bringing another perspective. The next question I'm going to ask is a personal one to each of you. Is there a story that you have about a life transition that significantly altered your future? Give us some quick points about what happened. How did you, or do you still mark its effect on you? Do you still think about it in terms of being an important event in your life? So is there a story that you have about a life transition that significantly altered your future? Who am I going to ask? Marina, let's start with you.
Well, I was running a business. I had a business in New Jersey, and it did very, very, very well. And there was a little voice that in me said to me, it's time to shift. And I said, no, absolutely not. There's no way, you have the goose that lays golden eggs. Why would I sell the goose or the golden eggs? Either way, it was a no. But the voice started getting stronger and louder, and the business started to go down. And finally, I had to close, and I was very upset with myself. And not only with myself, but also about the people that worked for me, because I put them really in a bad situation. After 14, 15 years, they had to look for a new job, and that really affected me. So I was running around the lake where we lived. I get to the other side, and I thought I'm going to have a heart attack. And I heard the voice, and I've heard it before, and it said to me very, very, in very clear tone, no, this is only a warning, but if you keep this up, the next time will be the real thing. I went, oh, and then it said to me, go and do your father's business, obviously not here, but in heaven, do your father's business. And I thought, okay, I was just told, I was notified. And I certainly took that as a very strong hint to move it along. And that was when I started to look at spirituality in a different way. I came, so to speak, came out with my first book, which was really dealing with spiritual issues. And I started to, step by step, start my marathon. So that was for me a huge transition into a completely different life that I thoroughly enjoy.
Ah, beautiful, beautiful story. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Lay, do you have a story of something that changed your life that you would consider to be a transitional story?
I have so many, but I'll keep it to one.
Okay.
After one very, very strong illness that had a near-death experience involved in it, I found myself too weak to be able to work a normal job. And I'm like, how am I going to survive? I've got to keep going somehow. I got to keep, what can I do? But I could barely get off the couch, let alone work a job. And so I'm thinking about this. And then one day I'm sitting on the couch, looking out the window, and I just got this bliss. I can't explain it any better than that. It felt so light, so bright, so joyful, so blissful. It just was like overwhelming bliss. I had no idea what this was. I just knew that it felt good, and whatever it was, I didn't want it to ever end. It lasted about 2 days. And after that, I could walk. I couldn't walk a long ways, but I could walk. And I knew that that was where I was headed. I knew that my life had changed from what I had before, which was your average workaday world, to wherever this led me. And that was the actual beginning of my spiritual path and where I am now. And that's how I got to be where I am. I later figured out that I had been given the gift of just a moment of unity consciousness with the great one, whatever you call it. It's a gift I can never repay. I'm honored that it was given to me and that it changed my life in the way that it needed to.
Beautiful. I wonder how many people who are watching this may have had a moment like that and not realized how powerful it was, or even what it was. And you've just given them an insight that they would never have had if they hadn't tuned into this either replay or this conversation as we're having it right now. Thank you profoundly. Thank you, Lay, for sharing that. Heidi.
I'm going to go to a very human experience of having my daughter. There's sort of, we call it the cosmic joke. I really only had maternal instincts for about 2 weeks, and I got pregnant in those 2 weeks. and after the 2 weeks, it was kind of like, what was I thinking? I don't really want to do this. And it's like, ha, 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 you're pregnant.
Too late. Too late.
Too late. Okay. So she came in, and there's an amazing story around all of that actually happened. The way that it was in so many ways transitional and changing, but the biggest for me was all of a sudden I realized I had this precious life, and I did not want to pass down the generational and ancestral pain and hurt and patterns that were in my family.
Wow.
So she really, her coming to my life started the most profound process of learning through I want to say traditional, but traditional in the indigenous sense, not traditional in the Western medical therapeutic sense. Going back to those roots and those ways of removing those patterns, removing those energies. And the coolest thing of it all is I now have a granddaughter, and she's being raised so emotionally intelligent and with such openness and honesty and kindness and support. And I can see in my daughter how the very harsh patterns of my family have been healed, and the next generation after her is completely rid of them. So there's the saying that it takes seven generations to change something. That is not true. We don't have to carry those sins and pass them on for 7 generations. Whatever we change in ourselves affects, and I've seen changes in my nieces and nephews and my sister, and I've seen, as I do the work, I can see it spread out through my family, even when they may not have even known I've done a ceremony about something particular. Within a couple of weeks, I can see the changes in the generations that are following me. And I believe they also heal the generations that brought us here. So I think that's the most important work that we can do. And that's where, once we become our own best friend, we can look at those things and we can know that we can heal them. I just think that's critical.
I agree with you 100%. I've seen it so often. And when we do work with those ceremonies, if we want to look at it from the scientific perspective, what we're really doing is we are triggering quantum energy, vibrational patterns that we are gently rippling out, those lovely, lovely ripples that do touch the people that we think about, that are most important to us, and strangers who just happen to be tied into our own wavelength. So when we do those ceremonies, we do clear generational trauma, generational pain. We don't even realize it, and we don't even realize who we're touching. But like you said, keep doing what you're doing, because it does make a difference. Beautiful, beautiful story. Thank you for sharing. We've had some amazing stories so far. Nicole, you're going to be the caboose.
Well, I feel like it's funny you said, like, my whole life has sort of been a transition, but I've had 3 major ones, and they correlate with moving across the country. And I feel like they all built on each other. The first one was, to pursue my dreams of the arts and being a dancer, and coming from a small town, that was a big deal. And I felt like I accomplished that to a point. They seem to coincide with like the decades of my life, because that was my 20s, right? When I was about to hit 30, I realized, I think I kind of did what I came to do. Maybe now is the time to settle down and be around my family and move back home. So I moved back to California, and, my mom ended up passing away a year later, and that was not part of my plan. So, I always imagined she would be there, and that, it changed the course of what I expected in my life, and what I had, always wanted, a small town country kind of life. And I found myself in a mental health job working with the homeless. And, at the time I was stepping my own grief down and not really understanding what was happening, and kind of losing myself in it, I would say. But through that job, it was kind of amazing, because they taught me so much about my own self and about my energetic boundaries that I didn't know anything about, and protecting my own mental health. And it started to open this like spiritual side of myself that, when I talk to friends, they're like, oh, well, you were always intuitive, even in college. And I forgot about that part of myself that was, connected. And that's when I got into tarot and decided that, maybe I want to start my own business, even though I was afraid of it. And then I found myself at 40, I was at the top of the mental health field in my county somehow, my degree in dance. I was in 5 years, overseeing the therapists and people with advanced degrees, kind of going like, how did I get here? And I could hear myself saying, you should be grateful. You only work 4 days a week, and you actually have a job you like, and you write reports and you find it interesting. But I just felt like I had gotten so far away from what my real dream was, which was to be creative and, be around artists. And always be creating, and I had a friend say to me, like, what are you still doing here? And it was like in that small moment that it just something changed in me. I never thought I'd move back to New York ever in my life, and all of a sudden I found myself looking at apartments in New York and coming back. And when I did, I didn't realize there was a whole nother level that I hadn't gotten to yet. And that's probably why my soul felt discontent, because there was more I still had to do. And I got to show that to myself and, realize that none of those choices that felt like mistakes or jobs that felt like they weren't me, they were all part of this, mind, body, soul journey, I realized. And it gave me like the perfect experience to help people who feel that same way, that feel stuck maybe, or feel like they lost their self somewhere along the way, which I think happens to all of us. So I think I started to looking back, like you said, now it's like I could see that they weren't, I was never at a dead end. I was always at a transition point, and it was how long I decided to be in that moment. It was always up to me, and so that can be scary or that can be powerful. But I can now look and say, like, transitions are a powerful place to be, right? Because that has the power of changing your life in the direction you want it to go. So, yeah.
And
so I would say I'm a try, what do you call it? Try transitioner or something.
well, I think that you've just wrapped up the other three panelists who've talked about how a story of transition changed their lives. And you've just given us a journey about how it could change anybody's life, because we all go through those 10-year, I'm not going to call them gaps, but cycles. And you've just given people who are watching a permission to take a look at their own 10-year transitions, their 10-year cycles. Thank you. Thank you to each of you who have shared a very personal story. You've given other people windows into your souls, your experiences that will help them as well. We're going to take a few minutes, and I'm going to give you an opportunity to tell our viewers a tiny little bit more about you and what you are giving them for having shown up today or on the replay. And then we're going to go back to one more question, and then we're going to introduce a little bit more about sacredyou.love to our watchers. So who do I start with? Lay, I think we'll start with you. Would you like to tell our viewers a little bit more about you, knowing that all of your links are going to be put into the chat following this conversation? They'll all be there so people can find you. A tiny little bit more about you and what it is that you would like to gift to our viewers today.
Okay. I consider myself to be an intuitive coach, an intuitive guide, more so than a coach. And I work with people who are in transitions, but I also help them to move through their traumas, past, present, and future, to be able to live their best lives. I'm also the author of several books, including a bestseller, which is called There Was No Fear. And those are all available on Amazon. You can see them anywhere you want. And I do the very best I can to help everyone make their lives be the best they can. And so they can live in whatever their best life is.
Wonderful. And could you tell us do you have a website that people could go to? You can say it, give its name now, but it will be in the links as well.
Okay, the website is called handletheshift.com. There are freebies on there, including one of the books that I have written, which is called Dream It, See It, Live It. There's also a freebie where you can get a guided meditation, and that's all on the website. And so I would be happy and pleased if everyone would go there.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. Now we have a more complete picture of you. Love it. Heidi, you're up.
Thank you. I love what you do, Lay. I love what everybody does. I've been on panels with everybody here, and I just have to say all of you are magnificent, and I love having these conversations with you. I am in the middle of transitioning. I've written a number of books. I primarily work with people who have had a lot of severe trauma and abuse in their life, which is my background. And how do you thrive when you get through that? One of the books that I co-authored is called Stop the Silence: Thriving After Childhood Sexual Abuse. I believe we all can thrive, we can stop the patterns, and we can change it, and it's up to us to do that. And so that's what I help people do, I would say I facilitate more than anything, because it's not me that does it. I simply help to guide people through their own transitions, their own discoveries, and changing the neurology. There's very interesting neurology that's created in us, especially if we've been sexually abused or severely abused as young children. And when we change that neurology, we change so much, and we move into such a magnificent place and are able to deal so much with the world in a different way. So that's really the area that I love to work with, because what happens is you end up becoming your own best friend. And, you know, it's hard enough to be your best friend, but when you've been raised to not in any way be kind or good to yourself, it's even more difficult. So that's what I love to do. And if you go up to my website, which is just HeidiHenyonen.com, you can download a PDF or Mobi copy of my books. I just want them out there for people. There's been a couple of them that have been bestsellers. If you want to buy them, you can certainly go on Amazon and other places, but feel free to download the free copy and to set up just a stress-free conversation. Let's have coffee together for a half hour, an hour, and let's see how I can help in that period of time. And then if you choose to continue working with me, great, but it's not a sales call. It's just, how can I help? So
Beautiful. Thank you so much. Nicole, what would you like people to know about you, and what is your gift to them today?
So I have a free soul purpose guide. It's a pretty lengthy PDF to ask you some deep questions. I actually use it in my coaching, but I go deeper with it in my coaching, and we talk about, you know, how you want to craft the future based on what matters most to you. But first you have to know what that is. So I have that on my website, followyoursoulpath.com. People can do 30-minute tarot readings with me, which is like, let's say you're just lost and you need some direction or feel confused about making a decision. And I see it as a way of helping you reconnect to yourself. I think you have all the answers and your soul has all the answers. But that's kind of a first step. And then I do have a 1 hour session that's like half tarot reading, half intuition coaching, where we talk about what comes up and what you might want to do with it. And then my bigger program is a 3-month program called Align and Attract, 3 months to living your truth and fulfilling your potential. And basically I use, you know, a little bit of my mind, body, soul background. So I was a Pilates instructor for 20 years. And I talk about, I actually look first at where your body's out of alignment. And a lot of times what's interesting is when we look at where your mindset's out of alignment, it's the same points in the body as the chakras. So the third session, we look at where your chakras are out of alignment, so that by the end of the first month, we kind of know what's holding you back and how it's all related, because I believe they're all telling you the same thing in different ways. And then I try to help people, you know, tell the difference between their intuition and their mind. So our mind, as you said, can lie to us, but our intuition, I think, always knows the truth. And then we kind of put a game plan together for what you want to go for, what leap of faith you want to take maybe, or what action you want to do that you've been holding off on because you're a little scared. And then I kind of walk with them for that next month. So that's a pretty comprehensive program, but I do have a free Facebook group too that anyone's welcome to join, just for community and support. And I do free readings in there every Wednesday. So I'd love to have people in there. It's a really fun group, and we do a lot of fun stuff in there too.
Beautiful. Thank you so much, Nicole.
Thank you.
You are a massive bundle of joy. I love it. I love it. I love it.
Thank you, because I wasn't
Marina.
feeling well the last couple of days. So thank you guys for by
Well, you're fooling us. You're fooling us with your energy, because you look pretty good. You look very good. You're welcome. Marina, please tell us a little bit about you and what you're offering our viewers today.
Well, I really help people in transition, believe it or not, but many, as we all know, life transitioned from one minute to another. So I help people who are going through changes and they don't know what to do. It doesn't have to be a big thing. I worked with someone who had difficulty speaking in public, and underneath the layer of the speaking in public was really something far deeper. And it had to do, he's not very happy in his particular profession right now. And as I took him into a semi-trance or an altered state, and we did belief change, he saw a future vision of himself that he couldn't believe that that's what he saw. And he realized, but that's what I really want. So that I help people really to transition from where they are, but also help them to see what is best for them. We make sure that the ecology is right, that there are no objections, that this is really for this person's highest good. I do it with hypnosis. I have an NLP knowledge, and I do clinical hypnosis as well. So hypnobirthing and depression and addictions, phobias. And I have on my website, I now did record a trance. So if you go to my website, and that would be dreamabetterdreamnow.com, you can get my free trance. It should take about 25 minutes. And it's the hero's journeys trance. So I guide you to feeling a more empowered self, become a more empowered self. And as my special, I'm giving a 45-minute stress buster experience. So I will work with anyone who chooses to connect with me. I will work for 45 minutes on helping them to release their stress by giving them techniques so that they can do it themselves. They don't need to come to me, but learning these tricks will help them to prepare themselves for every stressor that occurs in their lives.
Brilliant. Thank you so much. I'm going to close off this part with a little bit about me. I'm Sue Rumack. I am an empath trainer, and my main focus is helping people to calm the overwhelm. And we do that using somatics. We do that using spiritual practices. We do that with good old-fashioned coaching, as opposed to therapy, where people bring an issue. It could be a work-related issue, it could be a divorce issue, it could be a personal life issue, and we kind of peel all that back very gently, and in the process, we discover what it is that's driving it. We come up with a plan to solve that problem step by step, one at a time, and eventually they come to their solution. In the process, they have managed to identify who they are, what their purpose is, what their mission is, and come to that calm place in their lives. Now, I have two websites. One is under construction. You can go and look at it. It's kind of wild and all over the place, but it gives you a general idea. And the other one is courageouspath.com. Both will be in the links. My offer today is, again, like everybody else, I'm offering a complimentary conversation. You could have a 30-minute coffee chat. You could have a much longer conversation, which could be 45 minutes to 90 minutes, where you end up with a next steps life blueprint, where it's a written highlights PDF that basically tells you exactly where you are, the steps you need to get to go to where you want to be, and what it's going to take to get there. So I'm hoping that perhaps you'll be interested and check me out, because of course, like every one of our experts here, we are all here to support you in whatever fashion you need to be supported. Now, Heidi is a Sacred You tribe host, as am I. I'm going to give Heidi like a minute to tell us a little bit about your tribe. And then I'm going to talk about my tribe for just another minute. I'm not sure if Marina or Lay or Nicole also have tribes with Sacred You, but if you do, please. No, you don't. Okay. Heidi, tell us about your tribe, please.
Just real briefly, the tribe is called Becoming Your Own Best Friend. And we do conversations and practices about how to, stop the voices, stop the habits, stop the patterns that keep us from being our own best friend, how to become gentle, kind, and really just embrace ourselves as we are. It's not about showing up any other way than as you are.
And
So.
you meet every second week?
We were meeting on Fridays. I'm still on a sort of a medical hiatus for a little bit. So
Okay.
hopefully we'll start up soon.
I hope so too. Yours is a great tribe. I've actually popped in on it a few times. My tribe is Life Force Activators, and we meet every second Tuesday. It's, I believe, 7:30. You know what? Go to sacredyou.love, check out the time, because it's either 7:30 EST on the Tuesday night or 10:30 a.m. AEST, Southern Hemisphere time. And we are vibrant seekers of the energetic spark that brings people not just back to life, but just charges them up to live their best life. We get inspired, we get excited, we do happy dances. We explore all kinds of spiritual concepts, all kinds of curiosities about being human. You'll find replays in the replay section, the tribal replay section, and you can pop in and see what we do. If you love us, join us. There are links there for you to join us. So sacredyou.love is the website that actually supports all of this conversation. And if you're curious about what we do and want to know more about our tribes, I'm going to give you a little bit more about that in just a few minutes. Actually, I'm going to give it to you right now because we've got 5 minutes left on this call. We're not going to get to ask any other questions. I'm so sorry. I apologize for that. Okay, so sacredyou.love is a membership community of people who get just the way this whole panel is inspire, innovate, and ignite conversations that count. Sacredyou.love is inspire, innovate, and ignite for your entire lifetime. And it doesn't matter whether you know what you're looking for or you're a seeker and not quite sure what you're looking for. If you check out sacredyou.love, what you're going to find is that there are 31 and more growing tribes of people like Hetty and myself and Lay and Nicole and Marina, who are not yet hosts, but we hope one day will become hosts, offering their expertise and their excitement and their vibrancy. They teach classes, they give workshops, they give seminars, they have special events. Upcoming in October, starting October the 10th in the Northern Hemisphere, October the 11th in the Southern Hemisphere, we have Harmony Fest, which is a 4-day extravaganza, a spiritual extravaganza, where we have vendors offering all the wonderful things that they do and sell and make and teach. We're going to be having master classes that are incredible, given by our expert hosts. Heidi, are you doing a master class?
I haven't decided yet. I'm still I have so many
Pondering?
math classes that I love and stuff going on. So I'm
Me too.
I'm debating.
You're debating. Well, I've decided I am going to actually be presenting there. I will be doing a master class, and it's going to be about business charisma. It's the spiritual side and the energetic side of doing business. And it's going to be exciting, and it's going to be mind-blowing and changing and all the rest of that. But I'm not the only one. There's so many more of us there. It's sacredyou.love. Now, if I have gotten you even a tiny bit excited, because our tribe hosts meet once every second week, we do offer conversations like this one twice a week. We offer courses and other master classes as well. And in order for you to find out all about that, all you have to do is click on sacredyou.love. When you do that, you're going to be offered a $1 trial that goes for 2 weeks. At the end of 2 weeks, if you have not yet fallen in love with Sacred You, unsubscribe. Very simple, just unsubscribe. If you have fallen in love with Sacred You, do nothing, absolutely nothing. And you will automatically click over into 15 Australian dollars per month to have access to our 31 tribes, all of our courses, all of our masterclasses, all of the amazing things that we are going to be offering. We are offering now, but we'll be adding to over the next year. So it's sacredyou.love, $1 for a trial, $1 Australian dollar, which in American dollars is pennies. Okay. And then $15 a month after that, if you decide to stay. And if you don't, simply unsubscribe. Nobody's going to chase you. So is there anything else that anybody can think of that I have not mentioned about Sacred You? Because if there isn't, I'm going to thank our amazing our amazing panelists. Heidi, is there anything that you can think of that I should have mentioned and did not mention?
I would just add to that the different variety of the tribes that you can join. It's anywhere from learning tarot cards, learning human design, becoming your own best friend, inspiration. Your tribe is fabulous. It runs the whole gamut, to the point where there's even one tribe that just comes on and they just do crafts. I don't mean just do. They get together for an hour or two, and somebody may be knitting, somebody may be crocheting, somebody may be painting, but it's a time where you can just be with community. I think that's one of the things that COVID taught us. You know, if we hadn't been shut down, I would never have found any of you, you know, because I'd still be in my own little world. And so we're really, it really is an organization about how do we support each other? How do we grow together? And how do we have a lot of fun in that process? So like I said, there's everything from come and do crafts with us to some more serious work and learning. It's really fabulous.
And thank you, because I got mind fogged and you filled that in for me. I appreciate it so much. Trina has also added, Trina D, one of our admins, has also added, we have tribes on money magic and leveling up your business with support. So, I mean, we run the gamut, and we do it not just at the non-spiritual level, but we also bring in to the non-spiritual topics. We also bring in a little bit of that spiritual magic that makes us who we are and makes us feel comfortable talking about those things. So it's sacredyou.love, $1 trial, $15 a month after that, Australian dollars. And now I'd like to just say thank you to Heidi and to Lay and to Nicole and to Marina. Each of you has brought such a beautiful presence into the whole idea of celebrating transition. And I'm so glad that we didn't end up going just to the spiritual side of transitioning from this life to the next, but we kept that spiritual transition in this lifetime that we're living right now as human beings, spiritual beings living a human life and humans living a spiritual life. So thank you so much for joining us. This has been sacredyou.love. It's Inspire, Ignite, Inspire, Innovate, and Ignite conversations that count. Thank you, and we hope to see you on our next conversation. Be well, everybody.